So the next thing we've got to do is we've got to start prepping for the cladding to go on. Now I'm going to be using solid wood cladding on this that's going to go horizontally. You can do yours vertically, whatever you think will work. Composite looks lovely. But for me, I'm just going for a natural wood finish with tannalized wood. You'll see that when it arrives. Before we can put that on, we've got to put our battens on. And the battens need to hit a stud. Each of the soffits has got a pin going into the stud, the rafters, and then the rafter is sat on a stud. So if this nail here goes in right, using the spirit level, you can find where the stud goes all the way down. What we're looking for, and I've made a mistake here, is you need airflow, because the air, as we said, is going to go up under the cladding and through to stop any mould and to stop any mildew in there. So what we need to do is make sure that the air can flow between all the battens. So I've left some gaps, but I also haven't. So I'm going to go back and trim these. I've battened around the window, leaving space for the trim to go in, which you'll see, which protects all the ends of the horizontal boards. So every bit of lap that comes here, you need to protect the end of it, because that's the most sensitive part of it to water, to moisture. So I think wherever I've got a short piece that's coming in, I'm probably going to have to put an extra batten in there just to support it from wobbling. 2 in between each window, because again, we're going to have some short pieces coming down here. If you leave 1, it's going to wobble, it's not going to be secure. And then you're going to make sure you do under the window as well, so that when we put the cladding on, we've got plenty of sturdy timbers to put it into. So I'm going to show you doing around the door. It's going to be in a very similar way. Make sure you've got some space around it, and then just hit each and every single one of the studs.
Now, if you're watching this and you've done a very similar gradient single slope roof like I have on this, then you're going to realise that it's a lot easier just to cut these in 2 batches. Save you running back and forth measuring individual battens, just cut 3 the same length for the front and 3 for the back, because in all honesty, with a 10cm gap front to back, it's not going to make a huge difference on each one of the battens. And then make your life easier, cut them all at once, just like that. I found this to be one of the easiest processes in the entire build, and that sounds daft, but I was really worried that after the roof things might get a little bit tougher as I went on, and it would be getting harder and harder to finish as I'm getting more and more tired and the weather is starting to get worse and worse. But all you need to do is pin them at the top, find the stud all the way down by just getting them level, and then just hammer away. I don't even think that the bit above the door there's any sort of set technique that I need to tell you about. As long as you frame around the door, leaving yourself enough space for the battens that are going to protect the end grain, which you'll see later, and just pop a small piece on each of the studs, which I'll show you from a different angle because I didn't realise that the roof was going to be covering it. So, small piece on every single stud, then you're good.
Now I've just finished lugging down 46 4.8 metre boards of featherboard, and I got some 2x3 battens to make up the extra bits. Now, the battens have already gone on. You can see them on the corners here, and I've put them around the windows. I've got one more to do, which I'll show you. All these is treated 2x3s, and what their purpose is to protect the edges of the featherboard and to make it look neat. Bit of a double whammy. Round the windows, you're going to notice it's a bit cobbled. In truth, if I had my time again to do it, I would have made the window boxes deeper so they stuck out as far as they do now, with one piece. I've added it on, I'm going to paint it black, I'm going to tidy it up. Do you know what? There's going to be mistakes, but this isn't one that's going to make or break the projects. Around the doors, I've actually put a 45-degree heavy chamfer with the planer so that the doors, they won't open fully right back to flush, but then this isn't the path in. The path in is going to go that way. So they only need to open wide enough so that I can make use of the wider entrance. Anybody that's keeping count as to where we're up to now time-wise, it's been bang on to the day 1 month since I got planning permission, and that's not bad. The way I've done this battening, the corners is a 2x3 joined on in an L shape with half of a 2x3, and I've ripped it in a way that you saw in the previous video where I put the guard inside of my circular saw, ran it down the edge, and I halved each of the 2x3s that I was using for this part of the project. If you've got a table saw, band saw, there's much easier ways of doing this, but in my situation, you've got to use what you've got. So then I've attached those to the outside. I actually then ripped all of the rest of the 2x3s in half to make the battens around the windows, because I just thought a slightly smaller profile looked a little bit nicer than actually having the full 2x3 width-wise, because it's only the depth of the shallow side that I'm actually using to protect the cladding. And so that width is the only width you'll see when you're facing head on. And that's the depth of the cladding. As for the cladding, I'm going to show you as I go. It's 1 nail per board, and you nail it just above where the feather boards meet. But I'm going to show you in a bit more depth as we put that up. And I'm going to start at the back. You'll notice on the long wall at the back, I've had to do, because the run of 4.8 is not long enough for the full width of the shed, it's close, but I put a batten in about 4/5 of the way along. And nobody's going to go around the back of the shed to have a look at this whole thing. So I've done it where there's a double stud where the two parts of the wall join. So here, I'm just making use of that double stud so I can get extra strength on my battens that are going to hold the cladding, and it just gives me the confidence that I'm doing it right. Everything else from this point on, well, I'll show you my mistakes and I'll show you what I learned along the way.
This is really a job that you can do perfectly or you can do quite roughly. It's really up to what finish you want. I went for somewhere in the middle ground, like I've done pretty much throughout the entire build. What I will show you is terrible circular saw work. There's a concave table here. You're just going to trap the blade. There, lean it over a space, you'll get a much better job. Then pre-nail everything, because when you take it up to the wall, it will just bounce off as you're trying to hit it. So pre-nail it, and I even stuck a couple of screws in the middle, because when you take it up for the first time, screws are just easier to get in, and then you can hammer the nails home afterwards. Get it all done, and it's much easier to pop up after you've done it. Little block here shows me where I need to position it so that I can get the side pieces in as well. And then I just went round the window and made sure that everything was as neat as I can get it. So give yourself a break and don't try and get perfection here, because by the time I've painted it black, it looks great anyway. Oh yeah, a little bit of sanding just because, well, I had my sander out. Okay, you found me out. I also did the side pieces as well, where I put filler in to cover all of the screw holes. So maybe I did go for a slightly better finish than I originally let on. And back to the barn paint, covered all of these because I figured, well, as much protection I can give it as possible now to all the bits I can get to, because once I put the cladding on, you're not going to be able to get to the bits that you want to paint. So best to do it in this order, and then we're nearly ready for the cladding.
So this is the featherboard that we're going to be using. I've put 2 of these together just so you can see the way it's going to sit on the side of the building. Now I've chosen this because it's wide. So once overlapping, it should be covering 170mm per board, because they overlap at the end and you need to leave an expansion gap of approximately 3 or 4mm, because they will get a little bit wider when they're wet. With that in mind, you only put 1 screw or nail through each width, and you put it along the length of it in each one of the battens that you've got on the wall. That way, if it expands, you haven't got 2 fixed points holding it together. So be careful if you're going to nail through the thicker side, which is the bottom end, because you don't want to clip the one below and nail them together, because then you're holding it in 2 parts. See there, my nail or my screw hole is not going to go through both boards. I've got enough of an expansion gap. I'm going to pre-drill pilots through each of these all the way along. Wherever I'm needed, I'll measure them up. But I'll show you as I raise them, and from there it should be fairly simple. I'm going to try it on the back wall first, because that's where you can hide all of your errors. And I'm just going to measure between the 2 battens, because I think these are going to span the entire wall.
Now this clever little jig that sits on the bottom of the lower batten and then props the top one up ensures that I get the right gap between all of them. And it's mainly because I don't trust myself at all to get this right by measuring. Anyway, now this is a very repetitive process, so to guarantee that I got all of the nail holes in the right place, I just made a tiny little piece of wood with a hole in it, sat it against the bottom of the board, and it just ensured that all of my nail holes were going in exactly the right space. You could use screws, but I just thought at this stage nails is going to save me an awful lot of money. And because each of the walls has the same width board on it, I can just do them all at once and then carry them around once I've put the nails a small way through, and then lay them all up against the wall together and make sure that I'm doing this the most efficient way possible. But to be honest, it's not hard. Do it however works for you, because at the end of the day, you've got to enjoy this process as well as get it successfully completed. Now this back wall area that no one's ever going to see is a fantastic place to find your feet with any of these bits of the build, and so I started there. And 1 board spanned the entire width. I made sure that I put a couple of battens underneath it, because obviously you can't get the handy jig in there to get the right height on these because it's the first one. So I just made sure that it was level and off the ground enough so that there's drainage, and then hammered home all of the nails that I'd already put in. Then, with all the other pieces prepared and brought round there, I could start working them back onto the wall as well. This is what I mean about doing the jobs in batches, so I can do all the drilling, all the nailing, and then with all the boards around the other side, I can start putting them all up against the wall at the same time. It just makes it that much easier, and to be honest with you, I think you get a better quality job. Once you've got 2 or 3 up, you should really be checking for square every 3rd or 4th board, and yeah, maybe have someone with you because things like that happen quite a lot. I don't show you all of them. And it's a terrible angle to show you the jig that I set up, but there's got to be a better angle than that. I'm sorry, you're going to see a lot of but in this one from this angle. Anyway, I always did it in the middle first so that you can kind of pivot off that one nail. And look, there it is. There you can see how you use the jig. So you hold it up against the bottom one, get the right distance between them, hammer the nail home, and then go and do it on the other end. And it all works out really well. You check level every 3rd or 4th, and just every now and then the board sits at the perfect height so you can hammer it without having to bend down or lean up. Really satisfying. Oh yeah, and learn the knee technique as well. Because, well, why wouldn't you? Makes it fun. Now, I would recommend a little bit of maths to make sure you don't end up with a tiny slither of a batten at the top. For me, I didn't, and it worked out about half of one, which I think looks okay. With that in place, and as you can see the wall above the door done, now comes the hardest one, which is the front. It's not really all that hard, but there were mistakes. So, what I did was split the wall in half. First of all, because I couldn't get lengths of the board that would do the entirety of it. So I threw in a couple of extra battens to make sure that there was support on each of the ends of the boards, as well as in the middle. This was the easy bit. And with the wall being symmetric, I pretty much could do all of the boards across the bottom in 2 pairs. And, well, I need a few extra battens up on the top as well, because I had not left quite enough boards to get a full run there either, or even 2 halves. And you're going to see that. It doesn't look awful, but it wasn't quite to plan. Anyway, oh yeah, the knee support for cutting, that will pinch your blade. Even having a small bit like that, you shouldn't be holding it, it will pinch your blade. And even over the table, it will pinch your blade. That is 3 ways not to use the circular saw. Anyway, I didn't use the jig too much on this side because what I wanted to do is, this is really the corner where everyone's going to see. I wanted to make sure that each one of these boards met the other one on the other side. So I just marked along and transferred that marking onto the front so that when I'm putting my shiplap on the front, or my featherboard if you like, then it will meet the featherboard on the side. So from this time on, I'm really just matching up that corner and then making sure that they're level. See my markings? Looking for it. It's there. There it is. Oh, well done. And they're all the way down. So this way, I found it to be the easiest of getting it all to match. If you've got 4 sides that need to match, I don't envy you. That's going to be really tricky, but I'm sure you can manage it. After you've figured out where you're going to be putting the boards and how the width is going to be, that's the easy bit now. It's just to do exactly what you did before and just put in, well, best part of 100 nails for each side of the building. And, oh yeah, you can see that rain on the camera? This is one of those moments that if you get close to the end of a project, which we really are now, we're creeping up to within an hour of the end of the exterior of this building. You've got a choice. If you're like me, and you're bound to start rushing it because you want that completion at the end and you want that nice warm feeling of finishing, you're probably going to make mistakes. And, well, you're going to see my mistakes here. I should have packed my tools up, I should have gone up to the house, made a cup of tea, and come out the next day when it was perfectly dry. And I knew it was going to be perfectly dry. But I couldn't help myself. I just wanted to finish. So anyway, these bits are easy. These are all full boards all the way up to the top of the, about halfway up the wall. But look, now we've got windows. And that's not a full board directly underneath the window. So what I did was, well, I sliced this board in half so that it went to the bottom of the windows all the way along. and I did it beautifully. Freehand with a circular saw. I was so proud of myself. I lay it up against the window, underneath the window, and look, what a lovely fit. It even was level with the front, so it just matched perfectly. Hammered it home, and I was so proud of myself because I didn't realise, even now, when I'm checking to put the batten on the ends to protect the end grain, I still haven't realised that I've made a huge error. Even now. Cutting the batten to size, I'm going to screw it on, and in my rush, in the rain, so close to the end of the project, I was making mistakes. I nailed up all of the boards for the next side. I did it exactly the same way. It's just a mirror image of this side, so what could possibly go wrong? I put all of them up, still hadn't realised my mistake. We were going so well. I was so proud of myself. I was going to finish it on this day. I was determined. And then, well, you still haven't realised, you wally. I'm cutting the small pieces now to go between the windows. And even now, I haven't realised. Oh yeah, and I'm not doing great. Has he seen it? Has he seen it? Finally, here's the offcut. Here's the whole bit that I cut off the shiplap underneath the windows. What am I doing? Well, I'm filling in the bit that I should have left on there, shouldn't I? So, not only have I basically ruined the aesthetics of the building, but I feel like a right wally doing it on video. Anyway, I'm okay with it. It's not perfect. None of this build was ever laid out to be perfect. I didn't come into this saying this is a how-to to build your workshop or your garden room. This is just my way. And for me, a few mistakes here or there, I'll show you them all. You know that. I don't mind. And to be honest, I'm starting to get a little bit ready to finish.
For the last half an hour, I can only apologise, I've not been able to show you anything. I got little bits of footage together as I could, but it is hammering down and I wanted to get this finished. Did I need to? I could have waited till tomorrow, but I was so close. Anyway, for the whole of the exterior of the whole of this shed, workshop, call it what you will, this is the last nail. And I've only got 2 nails left, so I can't mess this up. But this is a big moment. Did it go to plan? No, these were supposed to be full-length boards. I didn't have enough though. I got loads of offcuts and I didn't want to go and buy more. But this is done. The inside's not. We'll get to that. But after all the injuries, all the lugging, bringing everything down here, the hot weather, the cold weather, the rain, we got to the end of it. And I'll show you from a bit further away so you can see what it looks like. Ah, it's miserable out here.
And so, folks, we came to the end of the exterior. I never expected to get there, I have to be completely honest with you. I didn't think that I would complete this project without getting help in to do it. Sounds daft to admit that now, but it's the God's honest truth. And yet, with your help, your assistance, your support, the exterior is done. It doesn't stop there, though. Now we have to do the interior. And that's the fun bit. So, thank you so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, please comment, subscribe, like, do all the usual stuff. If this is your first one and you want to see how the build is coming on, here's a video in the corner for you. If you want to see what the channel's all about, check out one of these videos. Thanks a lot. I'll see you over there.